And a very good evening to you from the sports desk. Let's get straight into this. Boxing South Africa's Women in Boxing program was launched earlier today in Johannesburg. Now, the focus is on strategic programs which are aimed at empowering women in the noble art. This launch is aligned with the Women's Month in South Africa, a time dedicated to celebrating and accelerating gender equity across all sectors in the country. Committee member Shereen Hunter joins us now to talk to us about this program. Shereen, a very good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Quina, and thank you for having me on your show.
Just give us a little bit brief of what the committee is about and what are some of the key roles that the Women in Boxing Committee is about and the program that was launched earlier today.
Thank you, Quina. I think, one of the main tasks of the Women in Boxing Committee is to bring a voice to the licensees that subscribe to Boxing South Africa and to give them a point of contact in terms of their own support. I think that's definitely one of the first priorities. Second priority would definitely be our contribution to making professional boxing a safe space for the girl child to compete or women in boxing. And then obviously it's to bring sponsorship and revenue into women in boxing so that it remains sustainable and so that we can scale and grow the brand of women in boxing in South Africa so that we can become more internationally competitive.
Shereen, you've been involved in boxing as a promoter over the years, so you know the ins and outs of boxing. What would you say are some of the key challenges facing women in boxing in South Africa specifically?
Well, besides the fact that women in boxing need more opportunities to fight, I mean, that goes without saying. That's been a long-time conversation. Fortunately, we are seeing the number of licensees growing and we are seeing more women on the bill. If I look back to when my promoting days, it was few and far between that we would find a woman on the bill. This year, we've seen a lot of it. In fact, August is very evident across our country of promoters who have no incentive to actually put women on the bill. We kick off this evening with a tournament that's being hosted by Aquila, Geraldine Larina. That's on the 1st of August. We've got another tournament on the 9th of August, Golden Gloves. I mean, Golden Gloves to have main bouts, female main bouts, is making history in our country. On the 23rd of August, another tournament, Apile Boxing Promotions. 29th of August, Jackie Bryce Promotions. 30th of August, Tanya Boxing Promotions. So we really have a lot that's going on. 31st of August, Rise Boxing Promotions. This is the first time that we are seeing promoters so actively engaged in putting women on their tournaments, giving them the opportunity to fight. And I think this is really encouraging for women in boxing.
In terms of engaging licensees, Shereen, how do you go about that? I mean, licensees in all aspects of the game, be it the boxers, be it the promoters, be it the ring officials, and so on and so forth, particularly in women's boxing. What role does the committee play in that respect?
Thanks, Quinn. And I'm glad you mentioned all licensees because often when we talk about women in boxing, we limit it to just the boxer. But there are so many wonderful opportunities for women to participate in the sport outside the ring. What we've done as a committee, obviously the easiest way to reach the licensees across the country is to meet them as we are this evening online. So we make use of Zoom and Teams meetings to make it accessible for all licensees. Most of them do have a cell phone and do have Wi-Fi access. So we reach the vast majority of licensees that way. And then obviously with the launch of the Women in Boxing series, it's a roadshow around the country, tournaments in every province. We will take every opportunity as a committee to meet with our licensees in the specific provinces as well.
Let's talk about support, because more than anything, you might have the great ideas of taking women in boxing to different provinces and having this series that you're talking about. But there needs to be that support, firstly, in terms of boxers that are available to fight, but also you talk about Corporate South Africa coming on board to make sure that the sport gets some sort of support. How do you manage that? Because, I mean, you and I would agree that boxing, not only in women's boxing, is struggling as far as financial support or financial backing from Corporate South Africa.
So this was a conversation that was on the agenda this afternoon, the question around limited funding. And the answer to that obviously is if you're fully dependent on government to fund, then you ring fence yourself in terms of scalability. It is on the agenda of the Women in Boxing Committee to reach out to corporate South Africa. We are businesswomen ourselves, all in our own right, so we all have our own network of connections. But I think what is very important, and it goes hand in glove in terms of sponsorship, is media support. Like you tonight, giving us an opportunity, giving us a voice, and definitely television broadcasting these bouts, because sponsors want the visibility. They want to see their brand on television. So the more support we get from the media in South Africa, and there's quite a huge obligation at the foot of media in South Africa to support women in boxing, to give us the broadcasting time so that we can negotiate with corporate South Africa with regards to a value exchange in terms of their marketing budget or sponsorships.
In terms of the boxers themselves, are we seeing a rise in interest of young ladies, young women, or women in generally trying to get into this art of pugilism, or are we still having skeptics in terms of women stepping into the ring? Because, I mean, we've had over the years some champions like Noni Tenge, just but to name a few, who were role models in their own right and took the game to a different level. But are we seeing more young women taking up the sport of boxing?
Well, according to the numbers, yes, we have 30 more licensees this year than what we did last year. Our chair lady, Rena Subotsky, actually mentioned that statistic today. So we've grown by 30 licensees year on year. That shows good appetite for professional licensed female boxers. There was also mention made of good amateur boxers having appetite for professional boxing. We are seeing boxing pull through recreationally in terms of gyms and fitness, and that also goes a far way in terms of supporting boxing. I think where we fall short, and Chair Rena mentioned it today, is that boxing was discontinued in schools a number of years ago. And so when you compare it with other sports codes, where it is encouraged and supported in schools, you obviously have a fast track in terms of development. So what we'd love to see happen is boxing coming back into school space and not banned as a sport or discontinued as a sport, but to give young athletes who do have appetite for wanting to become boxers the opportunity at a school level to fight and to compete, and then obviously taking the best of those through to our amateur ranks and then through to professional.
Shereen, let's talk about government support. You mentioned it earlier on en passant, but how much of a role does that play? We know that Minister Gayton McKenzie has been quite vocal about the support for boxing and some of the programs that he has introduced. How much of a role will that play in terms of improving not only this program, but women boxing in South Africa?
Look, I think it's pivotal. I think where the minister has already played a great role is in terms of equalising pay and fair pay for those concerned. We have to commend him on that. It's the first time we're seeing these kinds of developments in professional boxing in South Africa. So compliments to the minister for doing that. I think it goes a long way. What I would also like to say is we cannot depend on government entirely to fund professional boxing in South Africa. There's no way that we can scale the sport in that way. There are boundaries around that, and there is no way around the fact that we need the support of corporate South Africa to support professional sports and specifically professional boxing. We see the dividends of that, the rewards of that. If we look at other sports codes like cricket and rugby, netball, great sponsorship behind them, great media value, and, they've gone from strength to strength.
And I guess finally, it comes down to the value that the sponsors have. And if you put up a great product, you are bound to get corporate South Africa coming on board. And I guess it's a challenge for you guys as a committee to make sure that the product itself is sellable, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, we can't have our girls. We cannot have our young professional fighters getting ring rust. Lots of time outside of the ring. Doesn't matter how talented you are, Quena, and I've seen you in the ring many times. If you don't get enough opportunities to fight and you don't get your hours in the ring, the best of the best will fall short. So I think there definitely is a heavy duty and obligation on us as a committee to make sure that we're continually reaching out for that support and that funding and to keep our girls busy.
Shereen, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming through to speak to us this afternoon. Shereen Hunter, who is a committee member for that WIB Women in Boxing program that was launched earlier today in Johannesburg, and really advancing women boxing in South Africa, making sure that there's enough fights, but beyond the fights, enough leverage and opportunities for the sport itself to shine. We're going to have to leave it there.